Hi there, back with another cooking video. I thought today I would make some meatloaf with a napa cabbage side. It's some really good stuff. We'll get into it. So the ingredients for meatloaf, the way this mom makes it, is 1 pound of ground beef, 1/2 chopped onion, 1 clove of garlic, some rosemary, or any other spices that you personally enjoy. I happen to grow rosemary, so I have a couple sprigs here, and I'm going to show you the easiest way to chop those up. You need 1 egg, salt, pepper. I had a little extra cheese laying around, so I'm going to cut that in. Some ketchup and breadcrumbs. Now let me say, when it comes to breadcrumbs, you can substitute panko breadcrumbs if that's what you have around. You can crush up saltine crackers, put those in. I used to even take some oatmeal and put it in the blender to make almost a powder, and I would use that. You're just looking for something to act as a little bit of a binder and filler for this recipe. And the same thing goes for the cheese. I'm going to cube this up and put it in. It's kind of fun to bite into a cheesy bite of meatloaf. I have even gone so far, when I needed to make this meatloaf stretch, I've even put a couple of hot dogs into it, cut into rounds, and it was kind of fun to all of a sudden have a bite of hot dog with your meatloaf. So the kids especially liked that when they were younger. So just some thoughts and ideas. Meatloaf can be really whatever you want it to be. Any spices you want, anything that appeals to you. So here we go. Okay, so one of the fun parts about cooking up a meatloaf, in my mind, is that you're really dumping everything into a bowl, and then you're just getting it into the pan. So it's a relatively easy one. Now, that being said, I personally like to cook my onions for just a couple of minutes before I put them in there. It makes the flavor quite a bit softer. So I have here a pan with some butter in it, and I'm going to let that heat up a little bit, melt, and we'll get the onion in there to just cook up a little bit. In the meantime, I also like to cook my garlic for just a moment. So one of the easiest ways to cut into garlic, I've got a nice big clove there, is I cut off this root end. Move that aside. And then I just lay it on its side, lay your knife on top, and just give it a firm hit. And that brings the skin up, so it's so much easier to just remove. That's how I prefer to work with garlic, and I work with it a lot. Then you just hold on to it and carefully slice it. Pop it again this way. There's people who do this a lot better than I do. But here we are. Chop that up. I just do sort of almost a full mince. And we're going to throw that into that warming up butter in the pan, like so. We're just going to let this cook for a moment while we get the rest of our ingredients in here. Next, we're going to go ahead and take the rosemary. If you're not familiar, when you have a nice sprig of rosemary like this, it's kind of fun. You just hold on to the top, grab here, and then you can just kind of strip that off of the main branch, and then kind of pinch those off here. Fresh rosemary is not as strong as dried rosemary. That goes for actually any herb. So if a recipe called for 1 teaspoon of dried rosemary, you would put 2 in it if it's fresh. And so it may look like a lot, but that's okay. Rosemary is delicious. garlic in there. I'm going to go ahead and chunk this cheese up a little bit. One time I put meatloaf in small meatloaf pans, and I put a whole stick of string mozzarella kind of in the center. So it was a fun surprise when everybody ate their little mini meatloaves. And a little salt. This is my meatloaf. I don't measure this stuff. I have no idea. A few turns of salt. Put in a few turns of pepper. And I put ketchup in mine. I just do one good solid squirt of ketchup in there. I would guess it to be maybe a quarter cup of ketchup for 1 pound of beef. And I would guess that the same goes with this as well. Yeah. About a quarter cup of breadcrumbs or whatever you decided to use. I'm going to give these onions and garlic just another minute to cook, and then we'll put them in here and I'll be back. Okay, I've got my onions and garlic in there. They're a little warm, so I'm just going to flip those onto the bottom. Then start squishing them around. They cool really fast that way. We're going to get this all blended together. We've just got some meat mush there. And then we're just going to go ahead and get that into the pan. Pat this down nicely. I'm going to, since I'm working with a glass pan, I'm going to cook this at 400 for about a half an hour. We'll check it in a half an hour. Sometimes at that half-hour point, some grease needs to be dumped off of it. You don't want it to just sit in there in grease like that. And so then we throw it back in for about another 5 minutes beyond that. But it should take 30 minutes at 400 degrees. If you're using a metal pan, you can back that off to about 375 or even 350 and just see when it's done. So I decided today to also show you a side dish that can go along with your meatloaf. We came across some napa cabbage, and it must be in season somewhere. It was ridiculously on sale, and it was huge when we bought this. And so I came across a really easy recipe that's super tasty, and this makes a wonderful side to go with your meatloaf. So I have in the pan here a pat of butter and about a teaspoon of olive oil. I'm just making a single serving of this side. So just going to remove 2 of these. 2 is plenty for 1 person to eat, as you'll see. So as I said, I have a pat of butter in the pan as well as about a teaspoon of olive oil. I have a minced garlic clove that I'm going to go ahead and put into that. What that's going to do is flavor all of that oil with some garlic, and that's going to be really good eats for us. So here's our 2 napa cabbage. Now I did see that there's one little bad spot here. Don't be afraid of that. Napa cabbage is one that you just cut out the bad spot. throw that away. I cut the very ends off because they're pretty tough and fibrous and not much fun to eat. So you're going to take these and kind of line them up there, lay them flat, and you can see where that centerpiece is. And so we're going to cut around that, both sides. Now this, since it's lighter and thinner, it won't need to cook as long. So the pieces I'm going to chop are actually going to be larger. So they're going to be nice big sort of ribbons, about 1 inch wide. I'll set that there. Now this is still good eats, but it's more fibrous and dense, more like a celery. So I'm going to cut this down finer so it's easier to eat. So cut that nice and small, and then just cut it into small pieces. Okay, and my pan is pretty well heated up with the garlic in it. So I'm going to go ahead and take these pieces and put them in. And I'm going to let them cook for about 2 minutes. And then I'm going to put these in and let them cook for 10. Right at the very end, you're going to add, I just do a capful of apple cider vinegar. At the end, I just put a capful in there, a little salt and pepper, and you're done. It's delicious and cheap, good food. When you cook your cabbage, you want to cook it on about a 4 or medium, depending on your oven. Okay, we're coming up on that 30-minute mark with the meatloaf. And as you can see, there's a bunch of grease in the pan. I'm going to go ahead and dump that off into the trash. Just don't dump it down the sink. It needs to go in some kind of vessel. And then I'm going to go ahead and throw this back in for around about 5 minutes. So here we are, our lovely meatloaf, and our napa cabbage is cooked down well. And so you can tell the meatloaf is done most of the time because it's pulled away from the sides. That's when you can really tell. And I've got some nice crispies on the outside. That all lets me know that it is fully done. So I will plate this up in a moment. So there we have it, our yummy meatloaf slices, along with some napa cabbage on the side. No sauce necessary. The ketchup is already in the recipe. Well, I hope you enjoyed your meatloaf and napa cabbage meal. I'm going to go and have a little bit myself right now. And let me know what you think in the comments about the recipe you saw here today. Take care.